What I'm about to tell you will probably get me in trouble with 2 entire countries, but someone needs to expose the truth about Patagonia. Because everything you think you know about this place, it's probably wrong. Patagonia. The name alone conjures images of pristine wilderness and adventure gear logos. But here's what the tourism boards won't tell you. This isn't just a beautiful region. It's ground zero for one of South America's most heated territorial disputes, an environmental catastrophe happening in real time, and quite possibly the most misunderstood place on Earth. I'm about to take you through the 5 regions of Patagonia, but unlike every other video you've seen, I'm going to tell you the uncomfortable truths that locals argue about, governments hide, and tourists never hear. Chapter 1. The Patagonian Desert, the wasteland Argentina got stuck with. Let's start with the elephant in the room. When Chile and Argentina divided Patagonia in 1881, guess who got the better deal? The Patagonian Desert covers 670,000 square kilometers. That's the 8th largest desert in the world. And it's almost entirely on Argentina's side. Now, before angry Argentinians flood the comments, hear me out. 12 million years ago, before the Andes Mountains existed, this entire region was covered in lush temperate forests. But when the Nazca Plate lifted those mountains, it created what geologists call a rain shadow effect. All the moisture from the Pacific gets blocked, leaving the eastern side, Argentina's side, as essentially a cold, rocky wasteland. The irony? Argentina calls this desert part of their Patagonia. But historically, the indigenous Tehuelche people who lived here had a different name for it entirely. The term Patagonia was actually coined by Portuguese navigator Ferdinand Magellan in 1520, and here's where it gets controversial. He was describing the Chilean side of the strait, not the Argentine desert. This desert isn't your typical sandy expanse. It's mostly gravel plains and sandstone terraces that look like something from Mars. The only reason it has any life at all is because of rivers draining from the Chilean side. Yes, even Argentina's water comes from Chile. But here's what really irritates locals. While Argentina got stuck with this desert, they've somehow managed to market it as part of the Patagonian experience. Clever marketing, questionable geography. Chapter 2. The Lake Districts, where climate change killed tourism. Now we get to the good stuff. The lake districts on both sides of the Andes. And this is where our first major controversy begins. These crystalline lakes filled with glacial meltwater are undeniably stunning. The Chilean Lake District alone has 10 national parks, starting with Vicente Pérez Rosales, Chile's first national park. Argentina's Lake District around Bariloche is equally impressive. But here's the problem nobody talks about. Tourism here is dying, and it's not just because of COVID. Chile's tourism peaked in 2017 with 7 million visitors. By 2021, a catastrophic drop to 190,000. The official story blames the pandemic and Argentina's economic crisis. The real story? Climate change is making these destinations less predictable and more dangerous. Those picture-perfect snow-capped volcanoes like Villarrica and Osorno? They're becoming increasingly unstable. Lanín, the tallest peak for hundreds of kilometers, has seen unprecedented rockfall in recent years. The ski resorts that once operated year-round now struggle to maintain snow cover. And don't get me started on the border disputes. That neat line you see on maps between Chile and Argentina? It's not so neat in reality. The principle of highest peaks determining borders works great on paper, but when glaciers are melting and changing the landscape, who owns what becomes very complicated very quickly? Chapter 3. The Ice Fields, the world's fastest environmental disaster. This is where things get really uncomfortable. The Patagonian ice fields are disappearing so fast that scientists can barely keep up with the measurements. 21,000 years ago, the Patagonian ice sheet contained 525,000 cubic kilometers of ice. Today, only 3 remnants survive, and they're vanishing at an accelerating rate that should terrify everyone. The numbers are staggering. Around 1900, these ice fields lost about 6 cubic kilometers per year. By the 1970s, it was 15 cubic kilometers annually. By 2000, 24 cubic kilometers per year. That's the equivalent of Lake Tahoe disappearing annually. Chapter 4. The Southern Fjords. The battleground for Patagonia's soul. The Chilean fjords are where the real fight for Patagonia's identity happens, and most people have no idea. The Huascar National Park, covering 7 million acres of fjords and islands, sounds like a conservation success story. But it's actually ground zero for one of South America's most bitter cultural conflicts. First, let's talk about the name. The park is named after the Huascar people, who navigated these waters for over 7,000 years. Today, fewer than 5,000 Huascar people remain, and their language is nearly extinct. The last fluent speaker of Yagan, a related language, died in 2022. But here's where it gets controversial. These fjords aren't just empty wilderness. They're increasingly controlled by foreign interests. Most of the land, lakes, and rivers in this region are now privately owned, primarily by British investment groups. The same colonial powers that the region fought to expel now own it economically. The fjords themselves are a maze of channels used by vessels avoiding the rough Pacific Ocean. But these aren't just shipping lanes. They're becoming strategic choke points in global trade routes as Arctic shipping becomes more viable due to climate change. The ecosystem here hosts everything from pumas to dolphins, but it's under threat from an unexpected source: tourism recovery. As the region becomes more accessible due to glacial retreat, the influx of visitors is destroying the very pristine nature they come to see. And here's a fact that will anger both Chileans and Argentinians. Many of these fjords were never formally claimed by either country during the colonial period, making their current ownership legally questionable under international law. Chapter 5. Tierra del Fuego. The land of fire, ice, and forgotten genocide. Finally, we reach Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire. And this is where our story takes its darkest turn. At 56 degrees south latitude, this is the southernmost inhabited land outside Antarctica. Ushuaia claims to be the world's southernmost city, but that's actually Puerto Williams, Chile. A fact that sparks heated arguments between the two countries. The name Land of Fire comes from Ferdinand Magellan's 1520 expedition, when he saw indigenous fires along the shores. What he witnessed were the campfires of the Selknam, Yagan, and Huascar peoples, vibrant cultures that had thrived here for thousands of years. What happened next is one of South America's most systematically ignored genocides. During the late 19th century sheep farming boom, these indigenous peoples were systematically exterminated by European settlers. The Selknam people are now considered extinct. The Yagan barely survive. The Huascar cling to existence with fewer than 100 native speakers remaining. But here's what really makes this controversial. Some of these peoples were literally put on display in European human zoos in the late 1800s. Their tragedy was turned into entertainment. Today, Tierra del Fuego's economy depends on petroleum extraction and tourism, particularly as a gateway to Antarctica. The region's strategic importance is growing as climate change makes Antarctic access easier and more valuable. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every cruise ship that leaves Ushuaia for Antarctica is contributing to the very climate change that's destroying the region these tourists come to see. It's environmental hypocrisy on a massive scale. The weather here is brutal. Year-round temperatures near freezing, constant winds, and extreme precipitation. Yet tourism is booming as people seek last-chance destinations before climate change destroys them entirely. Conclusion. The uncomfortable truth about Patagonia. So, what's the real truth about Patagonia that Chile and Argentina don't want you to know? It's that this region is simultaneously one of Earth's most beautiful places and one of its most tragic. It's where colonial violence meets environmental catastrophe, where tourism simultaneously preserves and destroys, where two countries fight over territory while foreign corporations buy it out from under them. The pristine wilderness you see in travel magazines? Much of it is privately owned by international conglomerates. The indigenous cultures that define this region for millennia? Nearly extinct. The glaciers that carved these landscapes? Disappearing faster than scientists can measure. And perhaps most controversially, the climate change destroying Patagonia's ice fields isn't just about human emissions. It's part of a natural cycle that's been happening for 21,000 years, accelerated by human activity, but not caused entirely by it. Patagonia isn't just a place. It's a mirror reflecting everything wrong with how we treat indigenous peoples, the environment, and each other. It's beautiful, tragic, and disappearing all at once. The question isn't whether you should visit Patagonia. The question is, what version of the truth are you willing to accept? If this video challenged what you thought you knew about Patagonia, leave a comment telling me which fact shocked you most. And if you're from Chile or Argentina and I got something wrong, which I probably did, let me know. The truth is complicated, and it's only through discussion that we get closer to understanding it. Don't forget to subscribe for more uncomfortable truths about the world's most misunderstood places. Because the real story is always more complicated than the postcard version.